3 days. That's how long it had been since I'd heard my daughter's voice. 3 days of unanswered calls, unread text messages, and a growing knot in my stomach that no amount of rational explanation could untie. "She's just busy," I told myself on day 1, stirring honey into my morning tea. Rachel's always been terrible about checking her phone. By day 2, the excuses sounded hollow even to my own ears. My daughter might forget to call back, but 6 missed calls? No response to my increasingly worried texts? That wasn't like Rachel, not even during her most demanding cases at the law firm. If you're watching, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where in the world you're from. On the 3rd day of silence, I found myself standing in my kitchen, phone clutched in my hand, staring at the screen as though I could will her name to appear. The small blue dots beside my messages remained unchecked. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, in the way mothers sense danger to their children, even across miles. "Enough," I muttered, grabbing my car keys. At 62, I'd spent 35 years as an attorney specializing in domestic violence cases. I'd learned to trust my instincts, and right now, every instinct I possessed was screaming. The 40-minute drive to Rachel's upscale suburban home felt interminable. I tried her number twice more, hanging up each time when her cheerful voicemail greeting answered instead of her actual voice. I tried her husband Ethan too, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Rachel's house sat back from the street, tastefully landscaped and impeccably maintained, like everything in Ethan's life. My son-in-law was nothing if not meticulous about appearances. I'd once admired that about him before I noticed how Rachel gradually transformed herself to fit his exacting standards. I pulled into the driveway, noting Rachel's car was present, but Ethan's sleek black Mercedes was missing. A small relief. I preferred to speak with my daughter alone first. When my knocking went unanswered, I tried the doorknob, surprised to find it unlocked. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the October air. "Rachel?" I called, stepping into the foyer. "Honey, it's Mom. Are you home?" The house felt wrong somehow. Too still, too perfect. No coffee mug on the counter, no laptop open on the dining table where Rachel usually worked. The pristine surfaces looked untouched, as though no one had lived there for days. In the kitchen, I found Rachel's cell phone lying on the tile floor beside the refrigerator, its screen cracked, battery dead. My daughter was never without her phone, not since she'd become a junior partner requiring constant availability to clients. My heart began to pound as I moved methodically through the house, checking each room. The master bedroom was immaculate, bed made with hospital corners, no clothes strewn about. In the bathroom, Rachel's toothbrush stood dry in its holder. When I opened her closet, I noticed the gap immediately. Rachel's overnight bag was missing, along with what looked like a few casual outfits. Had she gone somewhere, but without her phone? I returned to the kitchen, plugged in her damaged phone, and waited impatiently for it to charge enough to turn on. When the screen finally flickered to life, a cascade of notifications appeared. My messages and calls, several from her office, but nothing from Ethan in the past 4 days. The last outgoing call from Rachel had been to an unfamiliar number 3 days ago. My hands shook slightly as I pressed redial. "University Medical Center, how may I direct your call?" A professional voice answered. My blood went cold. I'm sorry. I was trying to reach my daughter. She called this number recently. This is the main hospital line. Was your daughter admitted as a patient? 20 minutes later, I was running through the hospital parking lot, my heart hammering against my ribs. At the reception desk, I struggled to keep my voice steady. My daughter, Rachel Blackwood. I need to see her immediately. The receptionist's expression softened with practiced sympathy. "Are you family?" "I'm her mother, Margaret Hayes." After verifying my identity, she directed me to the surgical intensive care unit on the 4th floor. The elevator ride was a blur, my mind racing through scenarios, each worse than the last. The ICU nurse looked up as I approached her station, my face clearly betraying my distress. "Mrs. Hayes, we've been trying to reach someone from Rachel's family," she said, rising from her chair. "She's been here for 3 days." "What happened?" I managed, my voice barely audible. "Emergency surgery for a ruptured appendix that had developed complications. She went septic, and we had to place her in a medically induced coma to stabilize her condition." The room tilted slightly. "A coma? My God, why wasn't I notified?" The nurse frowned. Her husband was notified immediately. He's listed as her emergency contact. And where is he? I demanded, though I already suspected the answer. Her expression told me everything before she even spoke. He called to check on her condition yesterday, but said he was in Las Vegas and couldn't get back immediately due to some business emergency. Las Vegas. Business emergency. The words ignited something cold and hard inside me. May I see her now? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Rachel lay still and pale against the hospital sheets, tubes and monitors surrounding her like some macabre, technological garden. Her face, thinner than I remembered, looked vulnerable in unconsciousness. I gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, noting the faint yellowish remnants of a bruise near her temple. "Oh, Rachel," I whispered. "What has he done to you?" A text alert chimed from my purse. I glanced down to see Ethan's name on my screen. Just heard about Rachel. On my way back from business trip. How is she? Attached was a selfie of him looking appropriately concerned in what appeared to be an airport lounge, but I could see the casino sign reflected in the window behind him. In that moment, something crystallized within me, a suspicion that had been forming for the past 2 years, ever since Rachel started canceling our lunch dates and making excuses for unexplained injuries. With one last look at my unconscious daughter, I stepped out of the room and made a call I'd hoped never to make. When a familiar voice answered, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "It's Margaret," I said, my voice low and cold. "I need you to execute the agreement. Now." "Are you certain?" came the careful reply. "Once we start?" "My daughter is in a coma while her husband parties in Vegas. Yes, I'm certain." A pause. "I'll activate the team. 24 hours. I ended the call and returned to Rachel's bedside, taking her limp hand in mine. "I promise to protect you," I whispered. "And this time, I won't fail." I spent that night beside Rachel's bed, listening to the rhythmic beeping of machines keeping track of my daughter's vital signs. Nurses came and went, checking monitors, adjusting IVs, recording measurements on her chart. They offered me blankets, coffee, sympathetic smiles. I accepted the coffee, but couldn't bring myself to sleep. Instead, I studied my daughter's face, searching for the vibrant, confident woman I'd raised. Rachel had always been formidable. Graduated top of her class at Stanford Law, made junior partner at Morrison & Klein by 30. Yet somewhere along the way, after meeting Ethan at a firm charity event 5 years ago, that fierceness had begun to dim. "We met when he outbid everyone for my charity auction dinner," she'd told me, eyes sparkling. "Mom, he paid $10,000 just to have dinner with me." I'd been impressed then, charmed by his grand gesture. Now I wondered if that extravagant bid had been the first red flag, a man who viewed money as the solution to everything, including acquiring a beautiful, accomplished wife. My phone vibrated at 6:17 a.m. A text from Detective Samantha Reeves, my former client and now trusted friend. "Team activated. Initial surveillance in place. Need all access points to accounts and property." I'd prepared for this possibility 2 years ago when Rachel showed up to our monthly lunch with sunglasses covering what she claimed was an embarrassing walk into a door. I hadn't believed her then, but I'd played along, pretended to accept her increasingly thin explanations for canceled plans and mysterious bruises, all while quietly putting contingencies in place. Some might call it paranoia. I called it 35 years of experience representing women who never saw the danger until it was too late. At 7:30 a.m., Dr. Patel arrived to check on Rachel, his expression carefully neutral as he examined her charts. "How is she?" I asked, standing to stretch my stiff legs. "Stable. The infection is responding to antibiotics, but it was quite severe when she arrived. Has she complained of abdominal pain recently?" "I don't know," I admitted. "We haven't spoken much lately." The words tasted bitter. Dr. Patel frowned. According to her admission notes, she reported experiencing pain for nearly 2 weeks before collapsing. That's unusually long to ignore appendicitis symptoms. I thought about Rachel's last-minute cancellation of our lunch 3 weeks ago. Had she been in pain even then? "Her husband," I began carefully. "He mentioned being away on business. Do you know if he was here when she was admitted?" The doctor hesitated. "I shouldn't discuss this, but given the circumstances, no. She was alone when the ambulance brought her in. She'd called 911 herself after collapsing at home." My fingers curled into fists. "And has he visited at all?" "Not that I'm aware of." Dr. Patel's professional demeanor slipped slightly, revealing a flash of judgment. Mrs. Hayes, is there something I should know about your daughter's home situation? I considered how to respond. If my suspicions were correct, I needed allies, but discretion was equally crucial. My son-in-law travels frequently, I said carefully. I'm just trying to understand the timeline of events. Dr. Patel nodded, clearly unconvinced, but unwilling to press further. We'll begin reducing her sedation today. If all goes well, she could regain consciousness within 24 to 48 hours. After he left, I stepped into the hallway to make another call. Alex, it's Margaret Hayes. Alexander Chen had been my law partner for 20 years before my retirement. I need a favor. Name it, he said without hesitation. I need you to prepare emergency guardianship papers for my daughter, Rachel Blackwood. She's currently incapacitated, and I have reason to believe her husband may not be acting in her best interests. His sharp intake of breath was audible. Margaret, that's a serious step, especially given Ethan's position and connections. I know, but I need to be able to make medical decisions and protect her assets if necessary. I'll have the papers ready within 2 hours, he promised. But Margaret, temporary guardianship is one thing. If you're building a case against Ethan, you'll need substantial evidence. That's being handled, I assured him. Just get me legal authority to protect my daughter. My next call was to Rachel's assistant at the law firm, a sharp young woman named Tanya, who had always struck me as fiercely loyal to my daughter. Mrs. Hayes, she answered, her voice dropping to a whisper. I was going to call you. I've been so worried about Rachel. How long has she been out of the office, Tanya? She called in sick last Monday, said she had a stomach bug. When she didn't come in Tuesday or answer emails, I tried calling but couldn't reach her. Mr. Blackwood said she'd gone to visit a friend who was having a crisis. Her voice turned bitter. I knew he was lying. Rachel would never just disappear without telling me. Did you notice anything unusual about her behavior recently? Changes in routine? Unexplained absences? Anything? Tanya paused. She's been different the past few months. Quieter. She started wearing more makeup, long sleeves even in the heat, and she'd get these calls that made her leave the room. From Ethan? I don't think so. Once, I overheard her saying, he'll know if the money's missing. Then she saw me and hung up immediately. I felt a chill. Tanya, I need you to do something for me. It's important, and it needs to stay between us. Anything for Rachel, she said without hesitation. I need copies of any documents she might have locked in her office, especially financial records, emails with Ethan, personal notes, anything she kept secure. I have a key to her filing cabinet, Tanya confessed. She gave it to me last month and made me promise to use it only in an emergency. She seemed scared. My throat tightened. This qualifies as an emergency. Get those documents and bring them to University Medical Center. Don't tell anyone where you're going. As I ended the call, a text from Samantha arrived. Vegas team reports subject heavily intoxicated at Bellagio poker tables. Down approx 30K. Female companion present. Not his wife. Surveillance. Continuing. I closed my eyes briefly, steadying myself against the wall. Each new piece of information confirmed my worst fears. The Rachel I knew would never have tolerated such betrayal, which meant the Rachel I knew had been systematically isolated, manipulated, and broken down until she no longer recognized herself. I'd seen it hundreds of times with my clients. Strong, intelligent women gradually reduced to shadows of themselves by calculating abusers. The thought of my brilliant daughter trapped in that nightmare made my blood boil. When I returned to Rachel's room, a nurse was adjusting her IV. We're starting to reduce her sedation, she explained. It's a gradual process. I nodded, taking my place beside the bed again. I'll be here when she wakes up. And I silently added, and this time, I'll be ready for Ethan. By noon, the hospital room had become my command center. Alexander had arrived with guardianship papers, which a sympathetic judge, an old friend from my days arguing domestic violence cases, had signed on an emergency basis. Tanya had delivered a manila envelope stuffed with documents from Rachel's office, her eyes wide with worry as she squeezed my hand before leaving. She's been acting strange for months, Tanya had whispered. I should have said something sooner. This isn't your fault, I assured her, recognizing the misplaced guilt I'd seen in countless friends and family members of abuse victims. Abusers are skilled at isolating their targets. Now, as I spread Rachel's documents across the small hospital table, A grim picture began to emerge. Bank statements showed large, unexplained withdrawals from their joint accounts over the past year. Credit card statements revealed charges for luxury hotels and restaurants in cities where Ethan claimed to be on business, always with duplicate charges suggesting he wasn't dining alone. Most disturbing were the life insurance policies. Rachel had a standard policy through her law firm, but I discovered Ethan had taken out an additional $3 million policy on her 6 months ago, with himself as the sole beneficiary. The paperwork bore Rachel's signature, but something about it looked off, the loops of her letters too precise, too careful, as if someone had taken their time to copy her handwriting. My phone vibrated with a text from Samantha. Subject checked out of Bellagio. Flight to Boston departs 2:30 p.m. Vegas time. Estimated arrival 11:15 p.m. Eastern. Our people will maintain visual contact. So Ethan was finally coming home. I wondered what had prompted his sudden departure. Concern for his wife? Or fear that his extended absence might raise questions. As I continued sorting through documents, a folded piece of paper slipped from between bank statements. It was a handwritten note in Rachel's distinctive scrawl, dated 3 months earlier. If anything happens to me, the flash drive is in my blue earring box, back corner, under the felt. The password is Sophie June 2011. Mom will understand. My heart stopped. Sophie June 2011 referenced my sister Sophie, who had died in June 2011 after years in an abusive marriage, the case that had propelled me into specializing in domestic violence law. Rachel had chosen a password she knew only I would recognize. She had been leaving breadcrumbs, creating a trail for me to follow if things went wrong. She knew. My brilliant daughter had recognized the danger she was in, even if she couldn't bring herself to ask for help directly. I called Samantha immediately. I need someone to retrieve a flash drive from Rachel's house, I said without preamble. It's hidden in her jewelry box. On it. Anything else? Yes. Ethan's flying back tonight. I want surveillance on him from the moment he lands. And I need full financial records, not just their joint accounts, but anything in his name alone. Already working on the financials, Samantha assured me. My contact at First Boston is pulling records as we speak. We should have everything by morning. And the life insurance policy verification? Still waiting on that, she admitted. Insurance companies move slowly, even for ex-cops. I hung up and turned back to Rachel, whose color looked slightly better than it had this morning. The nurse had explained that as they reduced her sedation, she might show signs of consciousness soon, perhaps subtle movements or responses to stimuli. I took her hand, running my thumb over knuckles that seemed too prominent. Had she lost weight recently? Another warning sign I'd missed? I'm here, Rachel, I whispered. And I'm not going anywhere. At 3 o'clock, a hospital administrator appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. Mrs. Hayes, there's a call for you at the nurse's station. A Mr. Blackwood asking about his wife's condition. My pulse quickened. So Ethan was checking in, maintaining the appearance of a concerned husband from afar. I nodded and followed her to the desk. This is Margaret Hayes, I said, picking up the phone. Margaret. Ethan's voice was warm, concerned, exactly as a worried husband's should be. I just heard about Rachel. I'm on my way back now. Had to wrap up this Vegas conference. How is she? The casual lie infuriated me, but years of courtroom experience helped me maintain an even tone. She's in a medically induced coma, Ethan. Apparently, she's been suffering from appendicitis symptoms for 2 weeks. Did you not notice your wife was seriously ill before you left for your conference? A beat of silence. She mentioned stomach pain, but she insisted it was just stress from the Harrington case. You know how stubborn she can be. Another lie. Rachel hadn't worked on the Harrington case in over a year. When exactly did you leave town, Ethan? The doctors say she was alone when she collapsed. His voice cooled slightly. Wednesday morning. Look, I feel terrible about this, Margaret. If I'd known she was actually sick, I never would have left. Of course, I said, injecting just enough sympathy into my voice to sound convincing. It's just been such a shock. Finding her phone on the kitchen floor, realizing she'd been in the hospital for days without any family. Her phone was on the floor? Now he sounded genuinely surprised. Yes, cracked screen, dead battery, right by the refrigerator. That's odd. She never lets that phone out of her sight. A pause. Well, I'm landing around 11 tonight. I'll come straight to the hospital. Actually, I said carefully, I've arranged for a hotel room near the hospital for you. You must be exhausted after your business trip. I'll stay with Rachel tonight, and you can take over in the morning, when you're rested. I needed time. Time for Samantha's team to set up proper surveillance. Time to review whatever was on the flash drive. Time to prepare for the confrontation I knew was coming. That's thoughtful of you, Ethan said, though I detected a note of suspicion in his voice. Text me the hotel details, and I'll head there first. After hanging up, I texted Samantha. Subject heading straight to hospital tonight, despite my suggestion otherwise. Need surveillance in place immediately. Her response came quickly. Already arranged. Team in place by 9 p.m. Flash drive retrieved. Courier bringing it to you now. By 6 o'clock, I had the small silver flash drive in my possession. I plugged it into my laptop with trembling fingers, entered the password, and felt my blood run cold as dozens of folders appeared on the screen. Rachel had been meticulously documenting everything. Photographs of bruises with dates and explanations, recordings of arguments where Ethan's charming facade slipped to reveal vicious verbal abuse, screenshots of text messages showing his controlling behavior, and financial records suggesting he had been systematically draining their accounts. Most damning was a folder labeled Insurance. Inside was a recorded conversation between Ethan and someone named Marcus, discussing how long it would take for accidental poisoning to appear natural if administered gradually. My daughter hadn't just been abused, she'd been living with someone plotting her death. As I stared at the screen in horror, a soft sound made me turn. Rachel's fingers were twitching against the blanket, her eyelids fluttering as she began the slow journey back to consciousness. I quickly closed the laptop and moved to her side, pressing the call button for the nurse. "I'm here, Rachel," I whispered, squeezing her hand gently. "You're safe now, and he will never hurt you again." Rachel didn't fully regain consciousness that evening, though the nurses assured me her increasing responsiveness was a positive sign. Her fingers occasionally twitched in my hand, her eyelids fluttered, and once I thought I saw her lips move in what might have been an attempt to speak. The medical team continued to reduce her sedation gradually, monitoring her vital signs for any concerning changes. I kept careful watch over my daughter while simultaneously preparing for Ethan's arrival. I uploaded copies of the flash drive contents to a secure cloud account Alexander had set up, ensuring the evidence remained safe no matter what happened. Then I made a series of calls, to Samantha confirming her surveillance team was in position, to Alexander updating him on the disturbing insurance conversation recording, and finally to Detective Marcus Rodriguez, an old colleague from my domestic violence advocacy days. "The recording alone isn't enough for an arrest," Marcus explained grimly after I played it for him. "But combined with the financial evidence and the life insurance policy, it gives us grounds for a formal investigation. I've already spoken with the prosecutor. He's flying in tonight," I reminded him, "landing at 11:15. We'll be monitoring him, but we can't take him into custody yet. Not without risking the entire case. We need to let him think everything's proceeding normally. Give him enough rope to hang himself." The metaphor made me shudder, thinking of how close my daughter had already come to death. And if he tries to harm Rachel at the hospital? He won't get the chance, Marcus assured me. "We have plainclothes officers on rotation starting tonight. No one gets into that room without proper identification." By 10 o'clock, the hospital had settled into its nighttime rhythm. Dimmed lights, hushed voices, the soft squeak of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum. I sat beside Rachel, one eye on her monitors, the other on the tablet where I could view the hospital entrance through security cameras Samantha had gained access to. At exactly 11:42 p.m., Ethan Blackwood strode through the hospital's main doors. Even after traveling cross-country, he looked impeccable. Tailored suit, not a hair out of place, his handsome face set in an expression of appropriate concern. If I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, I might have believed the role he played so convincingly, the devoted husband rushing to his wife's bedside. I watched on the tablet as he charmed the front desk attendant, who directed him toward the elevators. I texted Samantha. "Subject has entered the building, heading to ICU." Her response was immediate. "Team in position. Officer Davies at nurse station. Nothing happens without our knowledge." I closed the tablet, slipped it into my bag, and composed myself. The performance of a lifetime was about to begin, and I couldn't afford a single misstep. Footsteps approached Rachel's room, confident, measured strides that I recognized instantly. Then Ethan appeared in the doorway, his expression morphing into a perfect mask of distress as he took in Rachel's unconscious form. "Oh my God," he breathed, rushing to her bedside opposite me. "Rachel, baby, I'm here now." He lifted her limp hand to his lips, his eyes darting to the various monitors before settling on me. "How is she? Has there been any change?" "The doctors are gradually bringing her out of sedation," I replied, watching him carefully. "She's showing some responsiveness, which they say is encouraging. Thank God I got here in time." He brushed Rachel's hair back with practiced tenderness. "I've been so worried." The conference was a nightmare. No cell service half the time, back-to-back meetings. I came as soon as I heard. Each lie slid effortlessly from his tongue. I wondered how many times Rachel had heard similar falsehoods and forced herself to believe them. "It must have been quite the important conference," I remarked mildly. 3 days in Vegas while your wife was missing." A flicker of annoyance crossed his features before the concerned mask slipped back into place. "Missing? No, Margaret. She told me she was staying with her friend Jessie while I was away. Something about a girls' weekend while I was traveling. I made a mental note to check if Rachel even had a friend named Jessie. I suspected not." "How strange," I murmured. "Her office had no idea where she was either. Poor Tanya has been beside herself with worry." Ethan's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. "Rachel has been working too hard lately. I've been telling her to cut back, take care of herself. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen. Her running herself into the ground." The audacity of his manipulation was breathtaking, blaming Rachel for her own medical emergency, positioning himself as the concerned husband who'd warned her about overworking. I'd seen this tactic countless times with my clients, abusers recasting themselves as protectors, victims as authors of their own suffering. "The doctors mentioned she'd been experiencing symptoms for about 2 weeks, I said, watching him closely. "Did you notice anything unusual before your trip?" His hesitation was brief but telling. "She mentioned some discomfort, but Rachel's always been stoic about pain. I suggested she see a doctor, but she insisted it was just stress." Another lie to add to the growing collection. "Well," I sighed, gathering my purse, "now that you're here, I should probably get some rest. I've been here since yesterday morning." Panic flashed in his eyes, just a microsecond, but unmistakable. "You're leaving, but it's nearly midnight. The hotel you're staying at has a room for me too," I improvised. "Unless you think I should stay. Are you concerned about something?" His recovery was smooth. "Not at all. I just thought you'd want to be here when she wakes up, but of course you need rest too." As I stood to leave, Rachel's monitor beeped, her heart rate increasing slightly. Her fingers twitched against the blanket, and a small sound escaped her lips. Ethan leaned closer to her. "Rachel, baby, can you hear me? It's Ethan." I moved to the opposite side of the bed, ostensibly to check the monitor, but actually positioning myself to watch both of them. Rachel's eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. Her gaze was unfocused at first, confused. Then her eyes found Ethan's face hovering above her. Pure terror flooded her expression. She tried to speak, managed only a hoarse whisper. Her heart monitor accelerated rapidly, the beeping becoming more insistent. "Shh, don't try to talk," Ethan soothed, casting a quick, nervous glance toward the door. "You're in the hospital. You had appendicitis, but you're going to be fine." Rachel's eyes darted frantically toward me, widening in recognition. Her hand reached weakly in my direction. Mom, she managed, her voice barely audible. "Don't leave me with him." Ethan's face hardened for a split second before he forced a concerned smile. "She's confused from the medication. The doctor warned this might happen." But I'd heard her perfectly clearly. So had the recording device in my purse, and so had Officer Davies, who appeared in the doorway as if summoned. "Everything okay in here?" she asked, her hand casually resting near her concealed weapon as she assessed the scene. "My daughter's regaining consciousness," I explained calmly. "I was just about to call for the doctor." Rachel's eyes remained locked on mine, pleading. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm not going anywhere," I promised, both to her and to Ethan. "I'll be right here all night." Rachel's nurse arrived moments after Officer Davies, responding to the elevated heart rate alert from the monitoring system. She moved efficiently around Ethan, checking vitals and gently speaking to Rachel. "You're at University Medical Center, Rachel. You've had surgery. Try to stay calm." She adjusted something in the IV line. "This will help with any discomfort." Rachel's panicked gaze never left my face, though her racing heart rate began to slow as the medication took effect. Ethan maintained his position at her bedside, one hand possessively covering hers, despite her evident distress at his touch. "The doctor will want to examine her now that she's conscious," the nurse explained, glancing between Ethan and me. "Only one family member can stay during the examination." Before Ethan could speak, I said firmly, "I'll stay. I'm her medical proxy as of this afternoon." Ethan's head snapped up. "Medical proxy? That's not necessary. I'm her husband." "Who was unreachable for 3 days while she was in critical condition," I replied evenly. The court felt temporary guardianship was appropriate under the circumstances. His face darkened, the mask of concern slipping further. "You went behind my back to a court while I was out of town? That's completely inappropriate, Margaret." Officer Davies stepped further into the room, her presence a silent reminder that this conversation had witnesses. Ethan noticed, his gaze flickering to her uniform before his expression smoothed once again. "I'm sure you thought you were helping," he said, his voice recalibrated to sound reasonable. "But now that I'm here, we can clear up this misunderstanding. Dr. Patel entered then, nodding to each of us before focusing on Rachel. "Good to see you awake, Mrs. Blackwood. How's the pain on a scale of 1 to 10? Rachel's voice was weak, but clearer than before. 6. As Dr. Patel began his examination, the nurse politely but firmly ushered Ethan toward the door. "Sir, if you could give us some privacy. Hospital policy." "Of course." His smile didn't reach his eyes as he looked at me. "Margaret, perhaps we could get coffee while they examine Rachel. We should talk." It was a calculated move, separating me from Rachel, getting me alone. I'd seen this tactic countless times. Isolate, then intimidate. "Officer Davies," I said casually, "would you mind escorting Mr. Blackwood to the cafeteria? I'll join them shortly after the doctor finishes his examination." Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's not necessary. I can find my way." "It's no trouble," Davies replied pleasantly. "I was heading that way myself." Once they had left, Dr. Patel continued his examination while I stood at Rachel's side, her hand clutching mine with surprising strength for someone so weakened. "The surgery was successful," he explained to Rachel, "but you developed peritonitis from the delayed treatment. You were quite ill when you arrived." "How long?" Rachel whispered. "You've been here for 3 days," I answered. "I found you yesterday when you weren't answering your phone." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I wanted to call you." He took my phone. Dr. Patel glanced at me, his professional demeanor unable to fully mask his concern. "Mrs. Blackwood, I need to ask, are you afraid of your husband?" Rachel hesitated, her gaze darting to the door as if expecting Ethan to reappear at any moment. "Rachel," I said gently, "you're safe here. There's an officer outside, and I'm not leaving you alone with him again. Whatever you need to say, now is the time." She closed her eyes briefly, a tear slipping down her pale cheek. When she opened them again, determination had replaced the fear. "Yes," she whispered, "I'm afraid of Ethan. He's been hurting me for months." Dr. Patel nodded gravely. "I suspected as much. There are healing bruises inconsistent with your current medical condition." He made a note in her chart. "I'll contact our patient advocate and make sure this is documented properly." "There's more," Rachel continued, her voice strengthening slightly. "He's been putting something in my food. Small amounts at first, just enough to make me feel sick. It got worse after he took out the insurance policy. My blood ran cold, despite having already heard the recorded conversation about poisoning. Hearing it directly from my daughter made the horror viscerally real. "We'll run toxicology screens," Dr. Patel assured her. "If there are traceable substances in your system, we'll find them." After he left to order the additional tests, Rachel turned to me, her expression anguished. "Mom, I should have told you sooner. I was so ashamed. How could I let this happen? After everything you taught me, everything I've seen in your cases. This isn't your fault," I said fiercely, the same words I'd spoken to countless women over the decades. "Abusers are masters at making their victims feel responsible. But you were smart, Rachel. You documented everything. You created that flash drive." Her eyes widened. "You found it? In the jewelry box?" "Yes, and I've secured the evidence. Ethan doesn't know yet, but there's an investigation already underway." Relief flooded her features, followed quickly by fear. "He can't know I'm cooperating. If he suspects I've told anyone, he won't get near you," I promised. "We have enough to keep him away while the investigation proceeds." Rachel squeezed my hand weakly. "It started after I made junior partner. Small criticisms at first. My clothes, my friends, my work hours, then controlling my food, my medication. He'd get so angry if I questioned him, then so loving afterward that I'd doubt myself. The familiar pattern of abuse, isolation, gaslighting, control, all escalating gradually enough that the victim's perception of normal shifts with it. The night before his trip, she continued, I confronted him about money missing from our accounts. He lost control, worse than ever before. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I think he believed I wouldn't survive this time. That's why he felt safe leaving for Vegas. Fury rose in me, hot, righteous, clarifying. The evidence on Rachel's flash drive had been damning, but hearing her speak the truth aloud solidified my resolve. Ethan Blackwood would pay for what he had done to my daughter. Rachel, I said carefully, I need to go speak with him now, to keep him believing everything is proceeding as he planned. Officer Davies will stay with you, and there's a security detail outside. You won't be alone for a second. Fear flickered across her face, but she nodded. Be careful, Mom. He's not what he seems. I know exactly what he is, I assured her. And I've spent 35 years learning how to deal with men like him. I kissed her forehead gently, then stepped into the hallway where another uniformed officer had joined Davies. After confirming the security arrangements, I squared my shoulders and headed toward the cafeteria, where Ethan waited, still believing he controlled the situation. He had no idea what was coming. The hospital cafeteria was nearly deserted at this late hour. Just a few exhausted residents grabbing coffee, a janitor mopping the far corner, and Ethan sitting with calculated casualness at a corner table. Officer Davies had positioned herself at the coffee station, maintaining a clear line of sight to our table while appearing to mind her own business. I approached slowly, observing Ethan as he scrolled through his phone. Despite the late hour and cross-country flight, he looked immaculate, not a wrinkle in his designer suit, his dark hair perfectly styled, his manicured hands steady as he typed something before setting the phone face down on the table. Always conscious of appearances, even now. He looked up as I approached, his expression shifting into one of concern. Margaret, how is she? Is the doctor still with her? They're running some additional tests, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Her condition is more complicated than they initially thought. A flicker of something, alarm, calculation, crossed his face before disappearing. Complications? What kind of complications? They found some concerning test results that don't align with typical appendicitis. They're investigating possible causes. I kept my voice neutral, watching him closely. His knuckles whitened slightly around his coffee cup. I'm sure it's nothing serious. Rachel has always had a sensitive system. That's new, I remarked. She was never particularly sensitive growing up. Quite robust, actually. The change must be recent. Ethan forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. People change, Margaret. You haven't been as involved in Rachel's daily life lately. She's had several health issues this past year. Yes, I'm beginning to understand that. I leaned forward slightly. Ethan, we need to discuss the guardianship issue. It was an emergency measure taken when no one could reach you, but obviously we can revisit it now that you're here. His posture relaxed fractionally, clearly interpreting my words as a conciliatory gesture. I appreciate that, Margaret. I understand you were concerned, but I'm here now and perfectly capable of making decisions for my wife. Of course, I nodded, though the court will need some questions answered before transferring guardianship back to you. Standard procedure in cases like this. Cases like what? His tone sharpened. Cases where a spouse is unreachable during a medical emergency and where there are, I paused deliberately, unusual circumstances. Ethan's jaw tightened. There's nothing unusual about a business trip, Margaret. I've explained the communication issues. The cell service at the conference venue was abysmal. At the Bellagio? I asked innocently. That seems surprising for such a high-end establishment. His expression froze. What makes you think I was at the Bellagio? Oh, just the casino sign reflected in the window of the selfie you sent me. I smiled pleasantly. Plus the credit card charges, of course. Ethan's carefully constructed facade began to crack. He leaned forward, voice lowered, but intensity increasing. You checked my credit card statements? You had absolutely no right to access my financial information. Not yours, Ethan. Rachel's. As her legal guardian, I have complete access to her accounts, including the joint accounts you've been systematically draining for months. His eyes darted around the cafeteria, noting Officer Davies watching from a distance. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled, reasonable. The voice that had likely convinced Rachel to doubt her own perceptions countless times. "Margaret, I understand you're upset and worried about Rachel. That's natural, but you're creating problems where none exist. Rachel and I manage our finances together. She's aware of every transaction, including the $50,000 withdrawal last month, or the new life insurance policy with the suspiciously high payout." A muscle twitched in his cheek, the first genuine tell in his otherwise perfect performance. Insurance is a standard financial planning tool. Rachel and I discussed it thoroughly. And the poison? Was that thoroughly discussed too? The words hung between us like a live grenade. For a split second, raw fury transformed his handsome features before he regained control, his expression morphing into bewildered concern. "Poison? Margaret, what are you talking about? Are you feeling all right?" It was masterfully done. The slight emphasis on my well-being, the subtle implication of mental instability. I'd seen this tactic countless times in courtrooms, abusers suggesting their victims or advocates were unstable, paranoid, delusional. "I'm feeling perfectly clear-headed," I replied calmly. "Clear enough to have already provided the police with Rachel's documentation? All of it, Ethan. The photographs of bruises, the recordings of your arguments, the financial records, the conversation with someone named Marcus about accidental poisoning." All color drained from his face. For several heartbeats, he sat perfectly still, processing the magnitude of what I'd revealed. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "You're bluffing. Rachel would never document anything because there's nothing to document. She's her mother's daughter, meticulous about evidence, just like I taught her." I removed my phone, placing it on the table between us. "Would you like to hear the recording of your conversation with Marcus? Or perhaps see the photographs Rachel took of her bruises after you pushed her down the stairs? The ones with dates and detailed descriptions of each incident?" Ethan's mask slipped completely, rage contorting his features. "You vindictive bitch. You've never thought anyone was good enough for your precious daughter." "On the contrary," I replied, unruffled by the outburst. "I always hoped she'd find someone worthy of her brilliance and kindness. Unfortunately, she found you instead." His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with bruising force. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. This little investigation of yours won't go anywhere. I have connections you can't imagine. Judges, police captains. By morning, your evidence will disappear, and you'll be the one under investigation for fabricating allegations." I didn't flinch, didn't pull away, just looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. "Perhaps you did have those connections yesterday, but as we speak, your financial records are being subpoenaed, your accounts frozen, your friends questioned. The poison in Rachel's system is being identified by toxicology, and this entire conversation is being recorded, including your threat just now." I nodded slightly toward Officer Davies, who had moved closer during Ethan's outburst. "You're right about one thing, though. By morning, things will be very different, just not in the way you imagine." Ethan stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. "This isn't over, Margaret." "Actually, it is." I remained seated, calm in the face of his barely controlled rage. "Officer Davies will escort you from the premises now. A restraining order is being processed as we speak. If you attempt to contact Rachel or enter this hospital again, you'll be arrested immediately." His gaze darted between me and the approaching officer, calculation replacing blind fury as he assessed his options. "Fine," he said finally, straightening his jacket with forced composure. "I'll leave for tonight, but this is a misunderstanding that will be cleared up very quickly." He leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for me. "And when it's over, Rachel will choose me. She always does." As Officer Davies led him away, I released the breath I'd been holding. The confrontation had gone exactly as planned. Ethan's mask had slipped, his threats had been recorded, and most importantly, he was now separated from Rachel. But I harbored no illusions that this was truly over. Men like Ethan Blackwood didn't surrender control easily. The most dangerous phase was just beginning. I returned to Rachel's room immediately after Ethan's departure, my heart still pounding despite my outwardly calm demeanor. Officer Davies had escorted him from the building, but experience had taught me that men like Ethan, men who viewed their partners as possessions, rarely retreated for long. The most dangerous time for any abuse victim was the period immediately after leaving their abuser, when the perpetrator's need for control collided with the reality of losing it. Rachel was awake when I entered, her eyes anxious. "He's gone?" "For now," I confirmed, taking my seat beside her bed. "Officer Chen will be stationed outside your door all night. No one gets in without proper identification and your explicit permission." She nodded, relief softening her features slightly. "Did you tell him about the evidence?" "Yes." He didn't take it well. I gently touched the bruise forming on my wrist where he'd grabbed me. But that's actually good news. His reaction confirmed everything, and it was all recorded. Rachel's gaze fixed on my wrist, her expression crumbling. "He hurt you too." "I'm so sorry, Mom. This is all my fault." "No," I said firmly, taking her hand. "The only person responsible for Ethan's actions is Ethan. You did nothing to deserve this. Nothing." "But I stayed," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "After the first time he pushed me, after he started controlling my food, checking my phone, I stayed. A domestic violence attorney's daughter, and I couldn't even recognize what was happening in my own marriage. Because that's exactly how abuse works," I explained gently. "It's gradual, insidious. The most intelligent, educated women in the world can become victims because abusers are skilled manipulators. They isolate you, make you doubt yourself, rewrite your reality until you no longer trust your own perceptions." I delivered this same explanation to countless women over the years, but never had it felt so painfully personal. My brilliant daughter, Harvard Law Review, judicial clerkship, youngest junior partner in her firm's history, reduced to questioning her own worth, her own reality, by a calculating predator. "When did it start?" I asked, though I already had a timeline from her documentation. Rachel sighed, her gaze distant. "After I made junior partner. He was so proud at first, telling everyone his wife was a legal star. Then came little comments, suggestions that I worked too much, that I was neglecting our marriage. When I scaled back my hours to appease him, he criticized my ambition, suggesting I wasn't committed enough to my career. The classic double-bind abusers created. No response was ever correct, ensuring the victim remained perpetually off balance, constantly seeking approval that would never truly arrive. "The first physical incident was about 8 months ago," she continued, her voice strengthening as she recounted what she'd so meticulously documented. "I came home late from work. He'd been drinking. He shoved me against the wall, then immediately apologized, said it would never happen again. The next day, flowers arrived at my office. I told myself it was a one-time mistake. I nodded, understanding completely. And then it happened again. 2 weeks later. He was more careful after that. Bruises where they wouldn't show, always with plausible excuses. Then the controlling behavior escalated, checking my phone, questioning my whereabouts, isolating me from friends. By the time I realized what was happening, I felt trapped, embarrassed. How could I admit to you, of all people, that I'd fallen into this pattern? My heart ached. "Oh, Rachel, I would never have judged you. Never." "I know that rationally," she admitted. "But there's nothing rational about being in that situation." And then when he started with the food, she trailed off, her face pale with the memory. "Tell me about that," I encouraged. "The doctors need to know what to look for in your system." Rachel took a shaky breath. "It started small. Stomach aches, nausea after meals he prepared. I thought it was stress or a persistent virus. Then I noticed a pattern. I'd only get sick after eating food he'd handled. One night, I caught him adding something to my tea. When I confronted him, he claimed it was a health supplement to help with my stress. I pretended to believe him, but stopped consuming anything he prepared. That's when you created the flash drive?" She nodded. I realized I needed evidence. No one would believe that successful, charming Ethan Blackwood was slowly poisoning his wife. After I discovered the life insurance policy, I knew his endgame. The appendicitis was actually fortunate timing. I'd been planning my escape, but he found some of my hidden cash. I think he was accelerating his plan. The clinical way she described her husband's attempt to murder her broke something inside me. I'd spent decades helping abuse victims, yet had somehow missed the signs in my own daughter's life. "When I couldn't reach you," I said softly, "I activated the contingency plan I'd put in place after that lunch when you showed up with sunglasses hiding a bruise." Rachel's eyes widened. "You knew? Even then?" "I suspected. I've seen too many women wear sunglasses indoors in my career, but you denied it so convincingly, and Ethan's performance as the devoted husband was flawless. I chose to respect your privacy while quietly putting safeguards in place, just in case. The agreement, she murmured, understanding dawning. That's what your phone call meant. When you said, do what we arranged, you already had a plan to protect me. I've spent my career watching the system fail women, Rachel. I wasn't about to let it fail my daughter. A knock at the door interrupted us. Dr. Patel entered with a folder in hand, his expression grave. We have preliminary toxicology results, he announced without preamble. Mrs. Blackwood, we found elevated levels of thallium in your system. Rachel paled. Thallium? It's a heavy metal, colorless and tasteless, once used as rat poison before being banned due to its toxicity in humans, he explained. Prolonged exposure causes symptoms easily mistaken for other conditions. Gastrointestinal distress, hair loss, peripheral neuropathy. All symptoms I've experienced over the past few months, Rachel confirmed quietly. The good news is that now we've identified it, we can begin chelation therapy to remove it from your system. The bad news, Dr. Patel hesitated, is that it proves premeditated attempted murder, I finished for him, which means Ethan is not just abusive, but potentially homicidal. As if summoned by his name, my phone chimed with a text message from Samantha. Subject left hospital, but didn't return to residence. Lost surveillance briefly. Team reacquired visual near Boston Harbor. Behavior erratic. Approach with extreme caution. Before I could process this warning, Rachel's phone, which I'd recovered from her house and charged, lit up on the bedside table. A text message appeared on the screen from Ethan. Tell your mother she's made a fatal mistake. No court, no cop, no restraining order will keep me from what's mine. By morning, this all ends, one way or another. Dr. Patel, reading over my shoulder, immediately moved to the door. I'll alert security. As he left, Rachel gripped my hand, her eyes wide with fear. Mom, you need to leave. Go somewhere safe. He'll come for you first, to get to me. I'm not going anywhere, I replied, already dialing Samantha. If Ethan wants a confrontation, he'll get one. But not on his terms, on ours. Samantha answered on the first ring. Margaret, where are you? Rachel's hospital room. We just received a threatening text from Ethan. Stay put. I'm 10 minutes out with additional officers. Has hospital security been notified? Yes, Dr. Patel is alerting them now. What's Ethan's current location? Last visual was near Long Wharf, but he's moving erratically. On foot 1 minute, then grabbing a rideshare the next. It's like he's intentionally trying to shake surveillance. The concern in Samantha's voice was evident. We've got unmarked vehicles covering hospital entrances. But Margaret, he was seen entering a gun shop on Tremont Street about an hour ago. My blood ran cold. The stakes had just escalated dramatically. The shop was closed, Samantha continued, but the owner is a known associate of his. We couldn't see the transaction, but he left with a small package. He's armed, I stated flatly. We have to assume so. The restraining order is being processed, but it won't be official until morning. Even then, a piece of paper won't stop a bullet, I finished grimly. We need to move Rachel to a secure location immediately. Officer Chen appeared in the doorway, his posture alert. Security reports a hospital-wide computer system disruption. Cameras and electronic door locks are malfunctioning on multiple floors. Rachel's grip on my hand tightened. It's him. Ethan's friend Marcus is a cybersecurity expert. He's helping him get in. I made an instant decision. Samantha, change of plans. Ethan's expecting us to move Rachel, to run. Instead, we're setting a trap. Margaret, Samantha started to protest. He'll keep coming after us as long as he thinks he can regain control. I cut her off. We need to end this tonight, on our terms. After outlining my plan to Samantha, I turned to Officer Chen. We need this room to appear empty within 5 minutes. Can you arrange that? He nodded sharply. Consider it done. What followed was a carefully choreographed deception. Rachel was officially moved to radiology, according to the nurse's station, but actually transferred to an unused administrative office converted into a secure room. Officer Chen remained with her, while 2 additional plainclothes officers positioned themselves strategically nearby. Rachel's hospital bed, however, remained in her room, now occupied by a nurse approximately her size, covered to the neck with blankets, a wig matching Rachel's chestnut hair visible on the pillow. I took up position in the darkened bathroom adjoining Rachel's room. Door cracked open just enough to observe what happened. Samantha and Detective Rodriguez concealed themselves in the room across the hall. 4 more officers were stationed throughout the floor, dressed as hospital staff. "This is insane," Rachel had whispered as they wheeled her to the secure location. "Mom, he's dangerous. You can't put yourself at risk like this." "I've spent decades helping women escape men like Ethan," I'd replied, squeezing her hand. "Trust me, this ends tonight." Now, as midnight ticked past, the hospital corridor grew eerily quiet. The deliberate computer malfunction had resulted in non-emergency patients being consolidated to other floors as a precaution. Only our team remained, silently waiting. At 1:47 a.m., my phone vibrated with a text from one of Samantha's officers. Subject entering south stairwell, armed, moving quietly. I forwarded the message to everyone in our operation, then settled deeper into my hiding place, my breath shallow, controlled. Years of courtroom experience had taught me how to manage adrenaline, how to think clearly under extreme pressure. Those skills had never been more crucial than now. The minutes stretched like hours. Then, almost imperceptibly, the door to Rachel's room eased open. A shadow slipped inside, moving with deliberate stealth. I caught the glint of metal, a handgun held low against his leg. Ethan, dressed entirely in black, his handsome features hardened with purpose. He approached the bed slowly, standing over the blanketed form for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was eerily gentle. "Oh, Rachel, it didn't have to be this way." He raised the gun, aiming it directly at what he believed was Rachel's head. "Ethan Blackwood," I announced clearly, stepping from the bathroom. "Lower your weapon." He whirled toward me, gun swinging in my direction, shock and fury battling across his features. "Margaret," he spat, "always interfering, always thinking you know what's best for everyone." "Put the gun down," I repeated calmly, despite my hammering heart. "The room is surrounded. There's no way out of this." His laugh was chilling. "There's always a way out. Rachel is legally my wife. Once you're gone, once I explain how you fabricated everything in some delusional crusade against me, she'll come back. She always does." "Not this time," I replied evenly. "We have the toxicology report showing thallium poisoning. We have your financial records, the life insurance policy, the recorded conversation about accidental poisoning, and now we have you, armed, in her hospital room, making threats." Doubt flickered across his face before hardening into resolve. "It doesn't matter. None of you understand. Rachel belongs with me." "No, Ethan," came Rachel's voice from the doorway. "I don't." Both our heads turned. There stood Rachel in a wheelchair, flanked by officers Chen and Davies, her face pale but determined. "Rachel," Ethan's voice softened instantly, the gun lowering slightly. "Baby, you know this is all a misunderstanding. Your mother has twisted everything." "Stop," Rachel commanded, her voice stronger than I'd heard in months. "I found the thallium in your workshop, Ethan. I recorded your conversations with Marcus about dosages. I documented every bruise, every lie, every moment of gaslighting. It's over." Something dark and dangerous flashed in Ethan's eyes. The gun came back up, but now it was aimed at Rachel. "If I can't have you?" The rest happened in a blur. I lunged forward as Samantha and Rodriguez burst through the doorway behind me. Ethan turned, disoriented by the multiple threats, his finger tightening on the trigger. I collided with him just as the gun discharged, the sound deafening in the confined space. A searing pain exploded in my upper arm. Ethan and I crashed to the floor, the gun skittering away as officers swarmed him, forcing him face down, cuffing his hands behind his back. "Mom!" Rachel screamed, attempting to rise from the wheelchair. "Stay back!" I gasped, clutching my bleeding arm. "I'm okay." And remarkably, I was. The bullet had grazed my upper arm, painful but not life-threatening. As paramedics rushed in to attend to my wound, I watched Ethan being hauled to his feet, his perfect facade completely shattered, raw hatred distorting his handsome features. "This isn't over," he snarled as they dragged him away. "You'll regret this, all of you." "Actually, Mr. Blackwood," Detective Rodriguez informed him coldly, "it is over. Attempted murder of your wife through poisoning, breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, and now, attempted murder of Margaret Hayes. You'll be lucky to see daylight again before you're an old man." As they led him away, Rachel wheeled herself to my side, tears streaming down her face. "You could have been killed," she whispered, gripping my uninjured hand. "Why would you risk your life like that?" Despite the pain radiating through my arm, I managed a smile. "Because 35 years ago, I made a promise at your birth to always protect you, no matter what. Some promises can't be broken, not even by the cleverest abuser or the most sophisticated manipulation." Dr. Patel approached with a medical team, ready to treat my wound. As they helped me onto a gurney, Rachel kept hold of my hand, refusing to let go even as they wheeled us toward treatment rooms. "The agreement," she said softly. "It wasn't just about having friends in the police force or legal system, was it? It was deeper than that." "Yes," I confirmed, the adrenaline beginning to fade, exhaustion seeping in. "It was my promise to myself after your Aunt Sophie died, that I would never be passive in the face of abuse, not in my cases, and certainly not with my own daughter, no matter what it cost me personally." As the medical team prepared to clean and dress my wound, I saw something change in Rachel's expression, a shadow lifting, a strength returning. The long road to recovery from Ethan's abuse had only just begun, but in that moment, I glimpsed the resilient, brilliant woman who had been temporarily obscured, but never truly destroyed. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered, "for never giving up on me, even when I had given up on myself." The days following Ethan's arrest passed in a blur of medical treatments, police statements, and legal proceedings. My arm wound, while painful, required only stitches and antibiotics. Rachel's recovery was more complicated. The chelation therapy to remove thallium from her system left her nauseated and weak, though her doctors assured us the long-term prognosis was excellent. What surprised me most was the media attention. Despite our attempts to keep the situation private, the arrest of Ethan Blackwood, prominent real estate developer, philanthropist, and husband of rising legal star Rachel Hayes Blackwood, for attempted murder made headlines across New England. Prominent businessman charged in poisoning plot against attorney wife. Domestic violence advocate thwarts murder for insurance scheme. The secret life of Ethan Blackwood. Abuse, poison, and attempted murder. 3 days after the hospital confrontation, I sat in Rachel's hospital room, reading witness statements for the preliminary hearing while she slept. The door opened quietly, revealing Alexander Chen with an armful of legal folders. "How is she?" he asked, setting the files on the side table. "Better today. The doctors say she can go home tomorrow, though not to her house. Too many memories." Alex nodded, understanding immediately. "She'll stay with you?" "For now. I've set up the guest room. Samantha's team has already installed a security system and arranged for regular patrols of the neighborhood." He glanced at my bandaged arm. "And how are you holding up, Margaret?" I considered the question honestly. At 62, I'd expected to be enjoying retirement, perhaps traveling or taking up new hobbies. Instead, I was preparing to testify against my daughter's would-be murderer while helping her recover from months of systematic abuse. "I'm angry," I admitted. "Not just at Ethan, but at myself. I knew something was wrong months ago. I should have pushed harder." Alex shook his head. "Don't go down that road. You did more than most would have, setting up contingency plans, creating a safety net. When the moment came, you were ready." "But was I?" I gestured to the sleeping form of my daughter. "Look at what she endured while I was being respectful of her privacy." "Mom," Rachel's voice, still weak but clearer than it had been days ago, interrupted our conversation. "Alex is right. You can't blame yourself." I moved to her bedside, adjusting her pillows as she struggled to sit up. "How much did you hear?" "Enough." She reached for the water glass, her hand trembling slightly. "You taught me everything about recognizing abuse, about helping victims. But being the victim, it's different. The shame, the self-doubt, the way he made me question my own reality. Even knowing what I knew professionally, I couldn't see it clearly when it was happening to me." Alex pulled a chair closer to her bed. "The preliminary hearing is scheduled for next week. Given the evidence, the toxicology report, the recorded conversations, the financial paper trail, and of course, the hospital incident, the DA is confident about moving forward with multiple felony charges." Rachel nodded, a shadow crossing her face. "And bail?" "Denied," I assured her. Ethan's flight risk and the violent nature of the crime made that an easy decision for the judge. "He's not getting out, Rachel. Not now, not ever." She exhaled shakily. "His family has hired Preston Thornfield." Alex and I exchanged glances. Thornfield was one of Boston's most aggressive defense attorneys, known for his scorched-earth approach to cross-examination. "We expected that," I said carefully. "The Blackwoods will throw everything they have at protecting the family name. But they can't change the facts. Ethan was caught, literally gun in hand, after breaking into your hospital room, after you were found with thallium poisoning, after he'd taken out a life insurance policy and drained your joint accounts. It's not the facts I'm worried about," Rachel admitted. "It's the narrative. Thornfield will paint me as an unstable, career-obsessed wife who imagined abuse. He'll suggest I poison myself for attention. He'll portray you as an overbearing mother who never accepted her daughter's husband." She wasn't wrong. I'd seen this strategy countless times in my career, attacking the victim's credibility, mental stability, and motives. It was why so many domestic violence cases never made it to trial. The prospect of such public evisceration was too daunting for many survivors. "Let him try," Alex said firmly. "The evidence is overwhelming, and Marcus Delgado has already agreed to testify against Ethan in exchange for immunity." Rachel's eyes widened. "Marcus flipped?" I nodded. Samantha's team picked him up the morning after Ethan's arrest. When presented with the recorded conversations and potential charges of conspiracy to commit murder, he became remarkably cooperative. "According to Marcus," Alex continued, "Ethan's plan was to gradually increase the thallium dosage until you were hospitalized with an undiagnosable illness, then advocate for increasingly aggressive treatments that would ultimately lead to your death, appearing the whole time as the devoted, concerned husband." Rachel shuddered. "The perfect crime. If I hadn't found that flash drive in his workshop—" "But you did," I reminded her. "Your instincts and intelligence saved your life, Rachel. Even while being poisoned and abused, you gathered evidence and created an escape plan." A nurse entered to check Rachel's vitals, temporarily halting our conversation. As she worked, I studied my daughter's face, thinner than before, with shadows under her eyes, but with a growing spark of her old determination returning. When we were alone again, Rachel broached the subject I'd been avoiding. "His parents called me yesterday." I stiffened. "The Blackwoods contacted you? How? Your number was changed." "Through the hospital's main line. They claimed they had no idea about Ethan's behavior, that they were horrified. They wanted to see me, to apologize in person." She twisted the bedsheet between her fingers. I said no. "Good," I said firmly. "Whatever their intentions, now isn't the time." Rachel nodded. "That's what I thought. But there's something else." She hesitated. "Eleanor Blackwood mentioned that Ethan has a history. Incidents in college, a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend that was mysteriously dropped." Alex leaned forward, instantly alert. "Did she provide details? Names?" "No. She said she'd only share that information in person. I think she's afraid of something, or someone." I exchanged glances with Alex, both of us recognizing the potential significance of this revelation. If Ethan had a documented history of abuse, it would demolish the defense's inevitable claim that Rachel's accusations were unprecedented and therefore suspect. "I'll have Samantha look into it," I promised. "College records, police reports, court filings. There will be a paper trail somewhere. In the meantime," Alex added, "we should prepare for your discharge tomorrow. Margaret, is your house ready?" "Almost. Samantha's team is installing the last of the security cameras today. The guest room is set up with a hospital bed for Rachel's comfort, and I've arranged for a visiting nurse to help with the collation treatments." Rachel's expression softened with gratitude. "You've thought of everything. That's what mothers do," I replied simply. Later that evening, after Alex had left with promises to return the next day for Rachel's discharge, my daughter and I sat together in companionable silence. The television murmured softly in the background, some cooking show neither of us was really watching, while I reviewed police reports and Rachel dozed intermittently. During one of her wakeful periods, she turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Mom, do you remember what you said to me when I graduated law school? About why you became a domestic violence attorney?" I set aside the file I'd been reviewing. "I said that the law is supposed to protect the vulnerable, but too often it protects the powerful instead, that someone needs to stand in that gap. You've stood in that gap for hundreds of women over your career," Rachel said softly. "But what you did for me, putting yourself between me and a gun, that was something else entirely." "It was the same thing, really," I replied, standing in the gap, just more literally than usual. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "When I'm stronger, when this is all over, I want to redirect my practice, move from corporate law to domestic violence advocacy. Use what happened to me to help others. Pride swelled in my chest. This was the Rachel I knew, turning trauma into purpose, pain into action. Your father would be so proud of you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. He always said you had my stubbornness and his sense of justice. I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately, she admitted, wondering what he would have done if he'd been here, if he would have seen the warning signs with Ethan sooner. He might have, I acknowledged. Your father had an uncanny ability to read people, but what matters is that when it counted, you fought back, you survived, and now you're going to thrive. Rachel reached for my hand, squeezing it with growing strength. Because of you. Because you answered when I couldn't call. Because you came when I couldn't reach out. Because you fought when I couldn't stand. As night settled over the hospital, I watched my daughter drift into peaceful sleep, free from the fear that had shadowed her for so long. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the move to my home, continued medical treatments, preparation for the trial ahead. But tonight, in this quiet moment, I allowed myself to feel not just the weight of what had happened, but the triumph of what we'd overcome. Ethan Blackwood had tried to destroy my daughter through isolation, manipulation, and poison. He had nearly succeeded, but he had failed to account for one critical factor, that the bond between mother and daughter, once awakened, could prove more powerful than even the most calculated malice. 6 months after Ethan's arrest, I stood in the doorway of my home office, watching Rachel prepare for court. She moved with renewed confidence. The physical effects of the poisoning finally faded. Her hair had grown back thicker, her complexion regained its healthy glow, and most importantly, the sharp intelligence in her eyes no longer clouded with doubt or fear. "How do I look?" she asked, smoothing the lapels of her charcoal suit, not one from her previous wardrobe that Ethan had selected, but a new one she had chosen herself. "Strong," I answered truthfully. "Ready." Today marked the start of Ethan's trial. The preliminary hearings had been brutal. Preston Thornfield living up to his reputation for aggressive defense tactics. As Rachel had predicted, he attempted to paint her as emotionally unstable, career-obsessed, and manipulated by an overbearing mother. But the prosecution's evidence was overwhelming. The toxicology reports, financial records, Marcus Delgado's testimony, and most damning of all, the security footage of Ethan entering Rachel's hospital room with a gun. What had tipped the scales definitively in our favor was Eleanor Blackwood's unexpected cooperation. After our initial refusal to meet, she had approached the prosecution directly, providing documentation of Ethan's previously buried history. 3 ex-girlfriends with similar experiences of escalating control and violence, incidents carefully concealed through family connections and financial settlements. "Are you nervous?" I asked, helping Rachel gather her notes for her testimony. "Oddly, no," she replied. "I've spent 6 months preparing for this moment. I know exactly who Ethan is now, what he did, how he operates. There's a strange power in that clarity." I understood completely. Rachel had undergone intensive therapy these past months, working through the psychological impact of Ethan's abuse. The process had been painful but transformative. She had moved from victim to survivor to advocate, her natural resilience reasserting itself once freed from Ethan's influence. "Alexander called," I mentioned, handing her a travel mug of tea. "He's meeting us at the courthouse. The prosecution feels confident, especially with Eleanor's deposition about Ethan's previous victims." Rachel nodded, checking her watch. "We should go. I want to be settled before the courtroom fills." The media interest in the case had not diminished. If anything, as details emerged during pre-trial hearings, public fascination had increased. A successful, seemingly perfect couple, a calculated poisoning plot, a dramatic hospital confrontation. It had all the elements of a sensational story. But for us, it remained painfully personal. As we drove to the courthouse, Rachel reviewed her prepared testimony one last time. The prosecution had warned her that Thornfield would attempt to provoke an emotional reaction, to make her appear unstable or vindictive on the stand. "Remember," I advised, "he wants you to seem angry or hysterical. Your power lies in your clarity and precision." "I know," she said, a small smile playing at her lips. "I'm going to be the most composed, articulate poisoning victim he's ever cross-examined." Her determination filled me with pride. The daughter I had raised was fully present again, intelligent, strong-willed, and unafraid to face difficult truths. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters and cameras. Alexander met us at a side entrance, escorting us efficiently through security and into a private waiting room. "The prosecution will call you first, Rachel," he explained, reviewing the day's strategy one final time. "They want to establish the timeline of abuse before introducing the medical and financial evidence. Margaret, you'll likely be called tomorrow." Rachel squeezed my hand. "We've got this." When the bailiff came to escort Rachel to the courtroom, she stood tall, shoulders back, chin lifted. Gone was any trace of the frightened woman I'd found in the hospital 6 months ago. In her place stood a warrior, prepared to speak her truth without shame or fear. I took my seat in the courtroom, directly behind the prosecution table. Across the aisle, the Blackwood family occupied the first row behind the defense. Ethan's parents, his older brother, several cousins. Eleanor Blackwood caught my eye briefly, her expression complicated. Grief, shame, and a strange determination mingled in her gaze. When Ethan was led in, I studied him objectively. He had lost weight in pre-trial detention, his designer suits replaced by a conservative court-appropriate outfit his legal team had provided. But his demeanor remained controlled, his expression confident as he surveyed the courtroom. When his eyes found mine, he held my gaze for a long moment, his expression hardening before he turned away. Rachel entered next, escorted by the bailiff. She didn't look at Ethan, focusing instead on the prosecutor as she was sworn in and took her seat at the witness stand. What followed was one of the most powerful demonstrations of courage I had ever witnessed. For nearly 3 hours, Rachel detailed the progression of her relationship with Ethan, from charming courtship to subtle control to outright abuse, and finally, to the poisoning that nearly killed her. Her testimony was measured, precise, devoid of dramatic embellishment, yet deeply affecting in its clarity. "He began adding small amounts of thallium to my food approximately 8 months ago," she explained to the rapt courtroom. "The symptoms were initially mild: stomach pain, fatigue, hair loss that could be attributed to stress. As the dosage increased, so did the symptoms. When I began to suspect he was tampering with my food, I started documenting everything and stopped eating anything he prepared." The prosecutor guided her methodically through the timeline, introducing the flash drive evidence, the financial records, the life insurance policy. Through it all, Rachel remained composed, answering each question with thoughtful precision. When Thornfield rose for cross-examination, the entire courtroom tensed. His reputation for devastating witnesses was well earned. "Mrs. Blackwood," he began, his tone deceptively conversational, "you've painted quite a picture of my client as a calculating abuser. Yet you remained in the marriage, continued to attend social functions together, posted happy photos on social media. Why would an accomplished attorney with abundant resources stay in such a dangerous situation?" Rachel met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Thornfield, I assume you've never experienced domestic abuse. If you had, you would understand that it's rarely a sudden, obvious process. It's incremental, small compromises, escalating control, intermittent reinforcement through affection and gifts. By the time I recognized what was happening, I was isolated from my support network. My self-confidence was systematically undermined, and I was being poisoned, which affects cognitive function." Thornfield switched tactics. "You've mentioned your mother's career as a domestic violence attorney numerous times. Isn't it possible that her influence colored your perception of normal marital disagreements as abuse?" "On the contrary," Rachel replied evenly. "Her influence made me reluctant to admit what was happening. I felt ashamed, as if I should have known better. That shame kept me silent longer than I might have been otherwise." For over 2 hours, Thornfield attempted to undermine Rachel's credibility, suggesting financial motivations, professional jealousy, and even mental instability as alternative explanations for her accusation. Each time, Rachel responded with calm clarity, never rising to his provocations, never wavering from her account. By the time she was excused from the stand, the courtroom had fallen into a hushed reverence. Even Thornfield seemed affected by her testimony, his typical aggressive confidence somewhat diminished. As Rachel returned to her seat beside me, I noticed Eleanor Blackwood quietly weeping in the family section. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw in her gaze a terrible recognition. The knowledge that she had seen similar warning signs in her son years ago and chosen to ignore them, to protect him, to believe his excuses. The weight of that complicity now visibly crushed her. The remainder of the day brought testimony from medical experts about the thallium poisoning and its effects. When court adjourned, Rachel and I left through a secure exit, avoiding the media scrum on the courthouse steps. In the car heading home, Rachel finally allowed her perfect composure to soften. "That was harder than I expected," she admitted, her voice betraying her exhaustion. "You were magnificent," I told her, my heart swelling with pride and love. "Thornfield is known for breaking witnesses, but he couldn't touch you." She smiled faintly. "Because I was prepared, because I knew the truth, because I had you." That evening, as we sat on my back porch watching the sunset, Rachel brought up something that had been unspoken between us for months. "I've been offered a position with the District Attorney's Domestic Violence Unit," she said, "starting once the trial concludes." I turned to her, surprised but pleased. "You're leaving corporate law permanently?" She nodded. "It feels right, using what happened to me, what I've learned, to help others." She hesitated. "Actually, I was hoping you might consider consulting. Your experience would be invaluable." "Consulting? At my age? Why not? You're only 62, Mom. Your knowledge is still needed. We could even work cases together occasionally." The idea was unexpectedly appealing. Since retirement, I had missed the sense of purpose my career had provided. And working alongside Rachel, watching her transform her trauma into advocacy, would be deeply meaningful. "I'll think about it," I promised, though in my heart, I'd already decided. As darkness settled around us, Rachel reached for my hand. "When I was little, you used to tell me that story about the mother bear who moved mountains to protect her cub." I smiled at the memory. "Your father thought it was too violent for bedtime. All those hunters getting swatted into trees. But I loved it," Rachel said softly. "It made me feel safe, knowing my mother would fight that fiercely for me." She squeezed my hand. I never imagined how literally true it would turn out to be. We sat in comfortable silence as stars appeared in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring another day of testimony, including my own. The trial would likely continue for weeks, with no guaranteed outcome despite the strong evidence. Ethan's family wealth and connections still posed a significant threat, but in that moment, those concerns felt distant. What mattered was this: my daughter was alive, healing, and reclaiming her power. The cycle of abuse that had nearly claimed her life had been broken, and our bond, temporarily weakened by Ethan's manipulations, had emerged stronger than ever. "We should go in," I said eventually, noting the chill in the air. "Big day tomorrow." As we rose to head inside, Rachel paused, looking back at the night sky. "It's strange. For so long I felt trapped, like I was drowning. Now I feel possibilities. A future I'm actually looking forward to." "That's what healing looks like," I told her. "Not the absence of scars, but the presence of hope." She smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached her eyes. "I like that. Maybe we should put it on the brochure when we start our mother-daughter consulting firm." "Let's get through the trial first," I laughed, putting my arm around her shoulders as we walked inside. One mountain at a time. As I closed the door behind us, I felt a deep sense of peace. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, we would face them together, no longer as victim and rescuer, but as two strong women standing side by side, helping each other heal, and perhaps, in time, helping others do the same. The agreement had served its purpose. Now it was time to forge a new one, not born of fear and contingency planning, but of strength, purpose, and the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. Thank you very much for watching. Share with those who also like stories, subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you liked my story. Cheers.